Hi everyone. So I was drawing some stuff till I heard that Baku is hosting a mini hybrid tournament where the weight limit is 100 grams. If you don't know who Baku is, he's a YouTube hybrid maker and a pretty good one at that, so I decided to give his tournament a shot. I should mention this is a battle royale style tournament, meaning that when making a hybrid, we gotta think on strategy and long-term effectiveness too, instead of completely speccing on pure 1v1 combat. With that cleared, let's start. So as you can see in the thumbnail of this video, I'm making a reptile. An arthropod hybrid would probably be an easier way to ensure a high ranking, but I suck at arthropods. So I'm making a reptile, because reptiles are very cool. And if you read the title, you'll see I'm making a skink, because skinks are very goofy and underrated. Anyways, let's start with the genome already. This guy was selected as the base for two main reasons. One, its weight is perfectly within the weight range of the competition, and two, it is fairly chunky and compact compared to most skinks, which are slender and long like a noodle. Being shorter would actually be more effective in a battle royale, as the turning ratio would be faster and you'd have less surface area for multiple enemies to attack. Other than that, this skink is pretty average, but it's a good start. Any good hybrid must have decent armor. The singleback skink provides a set of thick vascularized osteoderms covered by large interlocking scales. The main reason I chose this armor over stuff like crocodiles and armadillo lizards is because the scales are arranged in a way where they leave virtually no gaps even when fully flexed. This means it is incredibly hard to get a solid grip on the hybrid with sharp weapons like claws or teeth. There's no need to worry about mobility. The singleback skink isn't slow because it has armor. It's the other way around. It needs armor because its chubby body and larger size make it sluggish. The armor on its own isn't really that heavy, so it won't hinder speed that much. It does slightly hinder flexibility though, but the following contributor is going to fix that right now. This might genuinely be one of the best contributors for not only this hybrid, but nearly any reptilian hybrid in general. This is because of the special beta-carotene it has in its scales. This keratin is highly glycosylated, which gives it an insane abrasion and friction resistance. Matter of fact, in sandblasting tests, the sandfish skink's keratin outperformed steel by a long shot. It was intact after hours of exposure, while the steel was visibly damaged. This translated to combat means it will be even harder to damage the hybrid. Most attacks will likely slip off because they can't get a good grip, even if the weapons being used are very sharp. Additionally, this special keratin is also highly elastic, which would not only increase the compressive resistance of the armor against crushing attacks, but will also make the armor way more flexible by allowing the scales to bend more drastically when flexing, compensating for the otherwise somewhat inflexible singleback skink armor. Now that defense is done, it's time to address mobility. Speed is essential in a battle royale. It allows you to rapidly attack enemies and possibly catch them off guard while helping make quick retreats if necessary. The skink will make the legs longer and slightly streamline the whole build in order to achieve extreme bursts of speed, though the tail will remain fairly short because having a longer tail doesn't actually help with speed. The 5-line skink only has it to distract its potential predators. Now, the main problem with mobility in a lizard-based build is stamina. Because their legs are mostly fast-twitch muscle fibers, they get a highly explosive speed at the cost of long-term endurance. The lactic acid buildup quickly tires out the legs and makes recovery take a long time. Improving oxygenation wouldn't help as these muscles operate anaerobically. This is a really big problem because in a prolonged battle royale, tiring out fast will leave you highly vulnerable to numerous threats before you can properly recover. Fortunately, there are two reptiles that can't help with that and contribute much more as well. Let's go with the turtle first. It has the ability to neutralize lactic acid buildups with minerals found in the skeleton, which allows its fast-twitch muscles to exert for prolonged periods of time. The drawback with this is that bone gets slightly weaker over time, but it's not catastrophical. Since this ability can be used voluntarily, the hybrid would only use it if it really needs to run for a good while. The second reptile I'm using offers much more though. Meet the broad-snouted caiman. As a crocodilian, it adds 3 additional mechanisms to deal with lactic acid. First off, it provides raw acidity tolerance, since its blood cells are modified to work even with extremely low pH levels. Secondly, it can voluntarily shunt the acid into its stomach to break it down. In order to do this, I will increase the acidity of the gastric juices with this same caiman. Finally, it can use the minerals in its osteoderms to help neutralize the acid, though this method does have the drawback of gradually weakening the osteoderms, similar to the loggerhead. With this, The hybrid now has 4 different mechanisms to deal with lactic acid buildup, which not only improves the amount of time it can sprint, but also reduces the recovery time considerably. I'm not really worried about the bones or osteoderms weakening a lot, as the effect is very gradual and minimal. Plus, it's not like the hybrid will be using this ability constantly, it will only use it in extreme situations. Other than that, the Cayman will provide your typical crocodilian set of abilities. You know, a very strong immune system, a strong healing factor that's able to clot blood or form scar tissue rapidly, a 4-chamber heart for better circulation and additional armor. Unlike crocodiles, caimans have underbelly osteoderms, which the shingleback skink lacks, so I'll be adding them to cover that part. Now, you could ask why this caiman specifically, if all caimans have these traits. You see, the broad-snouted caiman has the best skull and jaw enhancements that a caiman can give, counting with deep-rooted, sharp, conical teeth, tough gums, an enlarged ventral pterygoideus muscle to aid in bite force, and a highly porous skull with numerous hollow cavities that reduce the overall weight while increasing structural resistance. If you haven't noticed, I'm not changing the skull entirely to be caiman-based. I'm just adding upgrades that will complement the actual contributor for the main skull and jaw structure. This contributor being yet another lizard actually. This is the actual skull contributor. Despite its small size, it can bite at around 26 newtons thanks to its large head and strong adductor muscles. Scaling this up to 100 grams would leave us with around 106 newtons of force if we count the pterygoideus buff from the caiman. Speaking about that, the caiman's teeth go perfectly with the jaw structure of this lizard, since both crocodiles and lizards have a similar bite methodology of clamping down and tearing. All this force concentrated on the tip of the teeth will generate insane amounts of pressure, capable of biting through most things and tear them apart. This is why I had to implement the strong gums and make the skull spongy, to prevent the bite force damaging the hybrid itself. We now have 5 contributors left to review, so let's get through them quickly. Yet another lizard to improve the hybrid. The additions are pretty minor, so let's do a lightning round. The Komodo dragon provides great intelligence, Jacobson's organ with forked tongue, larger saliva production, resistance to Komodo venom, large sharp claws for climbing, and finally iron deposits on the teeth edges to improve their durability further. Yeah, I'm not kidding, that's it for this guy, so next. Okay, I know this seems weird. What the hell is a dinosaur doing in a tiny lizard hybrid? Well, it's pretty simple. The Ceratosaurus will contribute some good old pneumatic bones and air sacs, alongside avian respiration of course. This fixes a major flaw in our hybrid, because skinks can't breathe while running, which is a major stamina issue. By adding this avian respiratory system, the hybrid gets a constant flow of fresh air, which drastically increases oxygen intake. Besides that, the pneumatic bones also make the hybrid's build lighter and the skeleton structurally stronger, because unlike bird bones which are pretty fragile, theropod dinosaur bones are dense and structurally solid, which would further increase the hybrid's resistance against impacts and crashing forces. As a last trait, I'm adding the iconic head crests, which are mostly for display, but can help with cooling since they are vascularized and get in the way of attacks directed to the head. Previously I mentioned how the Komodo contributes to the base intelligence, but as we all know, corvids are probably the best when it comes to smarts. So I will use this guy to magnify cognition by increasing the neuronal density, which allows the hybrid to quickly learn and adapt to the situation in order to take the best course of action. This might be a stretch, but I even think the hybrid could even try to instigate fights or reap the benefits out of a previous confrontation, given that the hooded crow does the same thing often. This bird will also grant some basic but useful avian traits, such as a higher density of cone cells for better eyesight and an efficient metabolism. To explain this further, birds are warm-blooded, which means they can regulate their own body temperature. But not only that, avian mitochondria produces more energy than mammalian or reptilian mitochondria. Applying these attributes to the hybrid will drastically improve its adaptability and endurance. Speaking about that, I should probably add some good toxin resistance to the hybrid, since I expect pretty much every other hybrid in this competition to have some sort of strong venom or poison. So I got a very cool thing to counter this. In a previous note I mentioned how the shingleback skink contributes to toxin resistance by directly protecting the nervous system with modified receptors and molecular sugar shields. This tiny mammal applies an additional layer of defense against toxins in the form of this thing, a compound that resides in the bloodstream and helps neutralize a variety of potent and complex neurotoxins, some of which include the taipan and secret snakes. The neat part about all of this is that toxins can be resisted without having to necessarily neutralize all of its components. Which means that if the toxin of an opposing hybrid happens to contain even a single peptide, enzyme or molecule which the hybrid resists, it's likely that it will be able to shrug it off. Not to mention the strong immune system and nervous receptor defenses given by the shingleback skink. Now that that's done, let's get to the final contributor. This is the finishing touch the hybrid needed. The reason I increased the saliva production with the Komodo but didn't add its venom or venom glands is because the Gila monster is going to provide them. The Gila toxin is extremely painful and lethal to smaller animals, such as the ones in this war. Perfect for quickly dispatching enemies rather than slowly wear them down. Other than that, it's going to provide thicker bead-like osteoderms on the head specifically, to further protect this area, since neither the shingleback skink or the broad-snouted caiman have strong armor there. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, with all of this done, the hybrid is finally complete. So, let me introduce you to Shin Daniel. This is Ineptodon micros, which means small silly tooth, fitting for this rather funny looking lizard. But don't be fooled. This individual, known as Shin Daniel or just Daniel, is a fierce, cunning predator, which I'll be dropping in Sector B, the plains. Equipped with a crushing venomous jaw, one solid bite is all it takes to swiftly take down most opponents. Daniel can detect multiple enemies at considerable distances with his keen eyesight and strong sense of smell, derived from his forked tongue and Jacobson's organ, allowing him to track down targets or avoid confrontation if necessary. Daniel is also surprisingly fast in this flat terrain, not only in short bursts, but also in more prolonged runs, thanks to his various stamina adaptations, so outrunning him won't be easy. Despite this, he isn't a glass cannon by any means. His tough and flexible armor allows him to shrug off most slicing attacks and tank stronger crushing moves long enough to counterattack with his devastating jaw. If that wasn't enough, toxins are rather ineffective against him due to his numerous biological defenses. Right now, it might sound like Daniel is just an aggressive thing that doesn't think twice before attacking, but remember, he's actually pretty smart. It is likely that he'll keep a low profile most of the battle royale, conserving energy and paying attention to his surroundings, only going into the offense if the opportunity for a kill is presented or if he is directly confronted and can't run away. He'd rather take advantage of other contestants fighting each other rather than get directly involved. And if for whatever reason he needs to climb that one olive tree, he can do that pretty easily thanks to his large claws. All in all, Daniel is a very efficient predator for his environment. So to all playing hybrids, you better be prepared, because Daniel is ready to not do a lot most of the time actually, but if you happen to fight him, don't expect an easy time. Alright, that's it. Good night.